So I'm going to start with a test question to see if you have the app. A lot of you have heard my accent before, so I ask these people. I like to start with it. So you think my accent is okay? Is it hard to understand? Don't pick that one. Is it sexy, like many people tell me? Or I give you another one, it's super sexy. All right, so you can vote whenever you want, and I'll be able to see your votes here. Let's see how many people vote. And very good, I can start seeing. And this is it's really good for boosting my morale at the beginning. Okay, so at least we have 26 people, 27. Okay, that's good. Now let me start with an actual question. Let me ask first, how many of you have seen my presentation before? So raise your hand. All right, that's not a lot. So let me do this. It's a little physics demonstration. He's going to throw a ball, two balls to two tracks, and then I'm going to ask you a question about it.
All right, so our track's becoming a little bit more complicated now. It's got two humps to go over. It's having to travel a little bit further up and down. Let's see if that's going to be enough to slow the ball down so that the race is going to be equal.
Got it? So two tracks. One has dips, the other one is flat. So the question is, which ball do you think gets to the end fastest? All right, so you can vote whenever you think you have the answer on your own. And it's about 22 people. Of those 22 people, there's about 75%, give or take, are wrong. So why don't you talk to the person next to you? Maybe you can convince the person next to you of your vote, and maybe you can converge to something like a... All right, so there's a couple of things I can do here, but let me ask you first, do you want to know what the answer is? You do. I mean, why do you care about this stuff? Because I haven't given you any extra points or anything like that. But let's suppose you weren't engaged, and you are because I heard you. Let's suppose you weren't engaged, and I wanted to engage you. One thing I could do, or this is what we do all the time, is I can try to motivate you with some kind of external reward. Let's say you don't get paid next month if you don't answer correctly. Right? Would that make you care more? Right. But would you like it? Probably not. You probably made more mistakes. But yet this is what we do with our students all the time, because grades are a big deal for them. They're like money for us, right? So yet, we actually do it all the time, and we kind of know that it doesn't work so well. But I can actually do other things. Let me try a couple of other things to try to motivate you. So a bunch of people voted for C. I've seen the video. C is wrong. That's not the right answer. So you want to take another shot at it? I can also try to give you a tip. So the principle behind this, if you've ever seen a pendulum moving like this, if you've seen a pendulum, you should be able to answer this question. It's the same principle. Let me give you another one. So here's another similar experiment, right? It's a track. There's two balls. But now what he's going to do is he's going to throw the ball from two different places. All right? If you can answer this question, then you should be able to answer the previous question. All right, so I'm going to give you another minute. Talk to the people around you, and tell me if you think, tell me what you think the answer is. Which one will reach the end fastest? The one that is, there's one that's going to be thrown, or do you think they get there at the same time? And then vote when you have the answer. You can click and tell me what you think the answer is. Try to convince the people around you, the person next to you. So I can do the same. Can you say, you can still hear me with this? Okay. So I can do the same thing, right? So I can try to incentivize you, but do you want to know the answer to this question? right? You cannot do, right? So I can also try to motivate you by I know a lot of people actually answer A as the right answer, and that's wrong. That's not the right answer. So what's happening now is that if you say A or C on the previous one, you probably now care a lot more than before, right? And in fact, if you actually did not hit, and you say you had a different answer, you also care more than before. Why? Because now there's only 2 choices left, all right? So there's a high probability of you being right. So by controlling the information I give you, I'm actually motivating you more or less, all right? So it's a different way of, but this motivation, instead of being from an external source, comes from inside you, right? And it's kind of the same idea. I go to clicker conferences a lot. I'm going to talk about clickers. I've never seen a student this happy by clicking before. Because clicking is not that fun. I mean, it's just you clicking. I mean, what is that? So in fact, if you actually have this question, I bet the student is not going to be happy at all, because that is super boring, right? In fact, if you actually talk for 5 minutes and then you ask the student this question, what you're really doing is giving the student an exam. And we know what the students like. My students hate exams. So if your students like exams, I think you should keep doing that. But if your students are like this, you shouldn't do it. In fact, it's even worse, because probably what you get is like that, right? I went to a clicker conference recently, and the person talking about clickers spent about half an hour in this slide, how to prevent cheating, right? And had this. Jesus, I mean, at this point, you give up with the whole clicker thing, right? Because why would you want to spend so much time on it, right? So if you're actually spending time on this, you're doing something wrong, right? So what I'm trying to talk to you is that if you do this right, then you can actually, the clicker becomes like a fantastic device, but you need to be able to know a little bit about motivation. And the thing I've been talking about motivation for the last 2 years is the reason you probably still want to know the answer to those 2 questions. I bet you still do. And it's because you're curious, right? And when it works, it's actually pretty strong, right? It's actually like you need to know. It's like an itch that you have to scratch. It's like when you're hungry or when you're thirsty, it's the same thing, right? In fact, I could argue that I don't have to tell you what the answer is, although I've seen the videos, because you probably are going to look for the answer on your own, right? You're really that motivated to know the answer, right? But I also like curiosity, because it is actually the seek for knowledge. And even though a lot of you hate me right now because I haven't given you the answer, it is actually a pleasurable activity. And this you can see it when you look at kids, right? And this is the opportunity to show you my daughter, right? So when she's actually curious, she's very focused, and she's enjoying that activity, right? So if we can get our students into that situation, then this is actually a very pleasurable activity, right? We also see that in animals, when you study animals, and this is my dog, Dasho. Puppies and kids are really, really popular in presentations, right? So he's also really happy when he's seeking, right? When the process of seek is also very enjoyable to him. So the idea of curiosity the techniques I use today to make you curious come from this theory of curiosity called gap theory of curiosity. It was developed by a behavioral economist. And it's very simple. It said that if I want to make you curious, all I have to do is to make you pay attention to the gap in your knowledge. The smaller that gap, the more you pay attention to it. The bigger the gap, the less you care, right? Let me try to give you an example of that. If I gave you this question, would you care? So what I'm saying is that there's a curiosity area, and it's going to depend on how much you think about the question, and you're probably not going to care, because if I poll you on this, all of you will actually think no. 2% of you will be hopeful, and will be Biden, right? Now, this may elicit some kind of emotional response from you, but it will not be curiosity, right, obviously. So now about the same thing with this question. If you give the students this question, this is assessment, this is not motivation, what you're going to get. What you're going to get is that students are going to divide themselves into groups. They either know it or don't know it, but they're not going to be engaged, right? Unless you get them into that curiosity area, then this is where you can actually exploit the information that you give to them to actually motivate them more. This is what this question is doing, by the way. Right? So I can actually take information out, give you information, give you tips, and as long as I hold the answer from you, and there's going to be a discrepancy between what they know and what they don't know. Right? You still don't know what I think the answer is. Right? This is the same thing with this one. Now, it's interesting because I can also try to play with the probabilities. So if I gave you this question, you wouldn't care. And by the way, I have to make a side note that I've given this question to thousands of people, and there's only one person who knew the answer. That was Eric Shan in the back. And he actually corrected me on the spelling and also on the right of the question. So now, but I can make you care, right? Because I can say, well, I'm going to eliminate these two people. And now you only have two choices. And you will care a little bit more because your probability of being right is actually increased. And now you start to care a little bit, right? So it's all a matter of managing information in a way to actually control your motivation. So this is kind of what I've been trying to do. So I think there are ways to do this with economics question. So the thing I want to kind of pose today is that do you think we have questions in our field that are as interesting as those two physics questions I gave you at the beginning? I happen to think that we are, and Macmillan is crazy enough to think that I'm right. So they're trying to work with me on developing these questions that are exactly the same type of questions that you saw at the beginning of the presentation. Are questions that are driven by motivating students, by making them curious, and not so much for connection or memorization, right? These are kind of questions that engage students through their internal reward system of curiosity, motivation, and so forth. So I actually I have this question, for instance, that I use a lot. And this is, for me, the best case that we have those type of questions, because when I ask my students this question, they actually come out like this. And when you ask economists these questions, they also come out like this, right? And I've done this millions of times. They're taking this question to the AEA, and this is what you get, right? So we can't even decide what opportunity cost is. And I think this is actually a good thing, right? Because it makes these questions interesting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave you with that question, right? And I prepare a little quiz for you, or some of those questions that I am arguing could actually work to elicit curiosity from our students in the same way that those physics questions actually did. So between now and tomorrow, you can go to this link, and there will be 6 questions there. And I'm going to open a quiz here on iClicker right now. And I am going to allow you to actually answer these questions between now and then. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you the 5 things I did yesterday with your question on physics question to actually generate curiosity, all right? By the way, I just opened an information gap because I told you I'm going to tell you 5 things, and I'm going to count, so you are going to be wondering what the 5 things are. So the first thing is you're going to ask all of them the same. I asked you the same question to all of you. I force you to make a single choice on that question, and you voted at the same time to that question, and then I asked you to defend that choice. So if you think about that, this is essentially what when you have a small class, this is a Socratic method of teaching, right? When you can actually ask questions. But when you have a large class, the final thing is hard to do unless you have a device like an iClicker, because you also have to manage information. I need to see how you're voting, and then I have to manage that information to actually maintain that gap open or closed, right? And the way I did it yesterday was eliminating choices, right? By eliminating choices, I moved the distribution in different directions. Okay, so essentially I said, so you have a curiosity continuum. The sweet spot is somewhere around there. And this physics question works well because when you voted on this question, and the first vote, this is how you split yourself. This is the voting from yesterday. And then I saw this. And then I know, because I've seen the video before, that the answer is not C, right? So then I knew that by looking at the information you're providing. I know that, and then I said I'm gonna eliminate C, because if I eliminate C, I automatically give you more probability of finding someone next to you who actually has a different answer than you. And at the same time, I'm creating a gap on the people. I'm increasing the gap on the people who answer C, because now they're really upset that they're wrong and they want to know why. And then I'm also increasing the probability of people who actually answer A and B are not really sure, because now they have a higher probability of being right. All right? So this is what I mean by managing the information. And this other thing I did yesterday is I saw that you were kind of split, and then I told you, have you seen a pendulum before, right? And then I'm kind of telling you, did your previous self know the answer to this question? Right? Because if your previous self know the answer to the question, then the answer is really close, right? So when you're in the, if you ever had a child, when are you the most curious about the gender of a child? Is if you actually get an ultrasound, it's at the sonogram, right? Or the ultrasound room when the doctor already knows, and he said, oh, I know what the gender is. And then you're there in the room with the doctor, right? At that moment, you're the most curious about the gender of your child because the answer is right next to you, right? So it's the same thing. If you tell the students, you answered this question last week, then you put the information on the tip of their tongue, right? So now they're really curious because their previous self already have answered this question. So this is what I mean by managing information. So now what we need is questions, right? So that I gave you a bunch of questions, and now the question I left you yesterday was, this is a physics question. It has a particular answer. Do we have our econ questions? Can they be better, or can we actually do at least as good as physics can do, right? In physics, they call this peer instruction, and I think that makes sense because students can teach each other, and there's one answer. I think in econ, it's a little different, right? So this is one of the questions I gave you yesterday. So this is one of the ones I actually do in class. This is how students usually vote in my class. This is from this semester. So the first thing I'm going to do here is see if I can take a vote from you on what you think the answer is. I'll give you about 30 seconds, and you can talk to the person next to you if you want, if you have your polling application open. And then I can show you how. I can already see what you guys are saying, right? And I already know how you actually answered during the quiz from yesterday to today, all right? So while you vote, when my students are actually, one of the ways I manage the information is I put doubt on their, I don't say that they're wrong, but I say, have you considered the fact that ideas could be something that is difficult to find? I try to, put them in different directions. You talk to a lot of economists. Economists will tell you that ideas are also scarce and stuff, right? So I try not to use the word right or wrong, and this is where I think we are going to gravitate a little different from physics, and I think it's a good thing. So, so here where you are right now. All right, so that's you. So what I'm going to do here is, even though most of you actually are answering correctly, let me see, so I can give you an example of that. So what I want you to do is, if you're with the person next to you, I want you to just use one device per two people, and I want you to just type what you think is the reason you chose the answer that you chose in the multiple choice. If you think the answer is D, why do you think the answer is D? You have 140 characters to write, but I want you to agree with the person next to you on what the answer is when you're going to type. All right. So you're going to have to one answer per two or three people. All right, so you notice that what I did here is I give you a further motivational incentive. Is that by you having to agree with the person next to you, and only one answer is the one that counts, then you automatically have to talk to the person next to you because you're on this together, right? But if you have a large class, this is where you're trying to apply the Socratic method to in a large environment, because now I can show you what the answers are, and then we can all evaluate those answers. And I'm going to have a lot of fun reading these answers later on, and I'm going to show them to you right now. But anyway, I just wanted to give you the idea that this is how you manage information in a large class. To do this in a large class, you need something like iClicker in order for it to work, all right? So what I'm saying is essentially, what I'm trying to do is to move you back to the curiosity area, right, in a question that perhaps doesn't have a perfect answer. So I'm going to call this the Socratic multiple choice question. I just came up with that name. I think it makes sense, right? And I think I'm trying to make the argument that this is not the same as peer instruction. And I think the reason is not the same, because I think peer instruction will be something like has a single answer. This doesn't have a single answer, right? So, but even a question like this one and by the way, this is when they did a survey of economists in the AEA, thousands of economists. This is how they split themselves into this question. And you split yourself just about the same, by the way, right? Just about the same. So even this, I think, there's no one right answer. I think there's one answer here. And this is based on a paper that was written. They thought there was one answer. You probably want to know what that answer is, right? That's curiosity gap, right? You're actually curious about that stuff, right? But I think this is something different. I mean, this is the difference between physics and econ, is that we don't have, it's hard for us to come up with a single answer. And what I'm trying to suggest is I have never told you that you need to have a right answer to create curiosity or motivation. You just have to open a gap. You don't have to have a right answer, all right? Okay, so let me give you now some of how do you answer some of these questions. This is my students. This is question number 3. That was you. You're going to get a little depressed by these things, by the way. This is the 4th question. I actually think this one has a right answer. You don't agree. You think there's many different answers. This is, I would say those ones are here. This one is one I liked a lot. A lot of students actually answer B. I try to get them to think about perhaps A or C. You're also split. Some of you did not like the fact that there was no answer for, the answer is not here, so you still click D, right? You don't pay attention to whatever choices you had. You just went, I don't like those choices, and I'm just going to go for D. So a percentage of you went that way. I love this question a lot because this is how my students split themselves the first vote. And then I said, well, but what about you only drive 1 mile a year? Wouldn't it be better if you just buy the Buick or the old car and park it in your garage, right? A lot of you actually got that idea a lot better, right? So what else I have here? So I'm moving you, right? So I'm managing information. So this is how my students split themselves on this one. I won't show you the results of this one because they're pretty depressing on the answers for how the economists, we can even agree on this answer sometimes, right? And I think that the reason is because we think that the question is too broad. But that's fine because it's not an exam question. This is a classroom question for discussion. You are in the classroom with your students, right? This is not the students this is not an assessment class. This is a motivation and debate class question. Okay, so let me try to kind of summarize here some of this stuff. I like to close with my idea of education. So this is my daughter, Mara, and she looks like very angelic there, but she's sometimes not so angelic. But I've been teaching her how to ride a bike lately, and I had to consider how to do it. I know how I didn't do it, and you probably know that. I didn't put her in front of a computer to read a PowerPoint presentation and told her, Mara, come tomorrow, and if you don't ride your bike after watching this PowerPoint, then you don't eat for the next week. I mean, this is essentially, that would be ridiculous, right, if I do that. But this is essentially what we do with our students all the time, right? Now, we know that if Mara wants to ride the bike, she has to ride it, right? And, she might have fun. She might get distracted, right? But that's not, I don't have particular knowledge about riding bikes. I'm not a bike expert. So I don't think providing content is what my value is to her as an instruction, right? And it's also not on, the design idea because, I know that she has to wear a helmet, and I know that she's probably going to have 2 training wheels. I don't want her to die because if she dies, she won't be able to learn how to ride a bike, right? That's actually not that critical. I don't think I provide her anything. So the design of instruction, which is a second service I think we provide as instructor, is also not where my value lies. Now, I think my value lies in the fact that she's going to have to fall. There's no way around it. She has to, in order to learn, she needs to fall because the way we learn is by correcting our mistakes. This is how everyone learns, right? And I didn't take a picture of Mara when she fell because that would be really mean, right? So this is not Mara, fine. But the thing is, I think where my value lies is to getting her to get up, not because she's not going to eat tomorrow if she doesn't get up, not because she's not going to do well in the exam or she's going to lose points, but it's because she's going to love to ride this bike. And that is where my value is. That's where I provide her the best, actually. If she has to pay someone to do this for her, I will be the person that will be able to charge her the most. Or her mom, right? So, because why? Because I love her. right? And I can actually motivate her better than anyone else. So I think that's where our value is as the cost of multimedia has decreased dramatically and as the online assessment has become so fundamental and so efficient. I think our value is in motivation. And that's actually a good thing because motivation is actually pretty hard. And that means that that's good for us because if we care about teaching, our value is increasing since we're actually focusing, our market is focusing us in the thing that's actually really hard to do. But we cannot do good at that if we use traditional things like external rewards. I think we need to start studying motivation, understanding motivation a little more in order to encourage students to actually want to learn. I think the first two things here, 1 and 2, is more about how people learn. I think number 3 is about why people want to learn. And I think that's where the value is, because I think 1 and 2, we know a lot about that. It's science, learning objective. But I think that teaching cannot be completely a science because it's hard to do a learning goal about inspiring students. How do you measure that? It's that's invaluable. And I think that's where motivation lies. So I think we are in a perfect time now to really get a reward for our efforts because now we're actually very, very different from other people. I think if anyone wanted to, a machine can do that pretty well. And if a machine can do it well, a machine should do it. I think 3 is really hard to do by a machine. Now, the last thing I will say, so yesterday, someone asked me, well, I haven't given you the answer to those questions yet, right? And so we said, well, how can you get your students not to answer these questions and don't they get upset? I think teaching is an art, right? I think filmmaking is an art. So here's a clip from the movie, what is it? This is the first, Before Sunrise. They know each other for 4 hours, right, or more than that. They're talking to each other. And then I'm gonna show you the clip, and then I'm gonna ask you a question about it.
Have you heard of this singer? I think she's American. A friend of mine told me about her.
Do you want to go see if that listening booth still works?
Yeah, okay.
There's a wind that blows in from the north, and it says that loving takes this course. Come here, come here. No, I'm not impossible to touch. I have never wanted.
Are they gonna kiss? Do you want to know? I don't think so, right? You want to watch the movie. Thank you. That's all I have.